Welcome, my loves, to Mel's Musings. I just wanted to sit today because I've had so much moving through me, especially as we're navigating these challenging times. What my role is, and I know a lot of us are looking for purpose, as in, what am I here for? What's my purpose? But I think a lot of us get lost in the idea of what's my job? How am I going to show up to make money? And of course, there needs to be an energetic exchange in everything we do in our life to live the physical life that we live as a human. But also to, I think we limit our understanding of purpose. I think it always comes down to, are we making, have we got, how am I showing up? What do I look like? That we miss the essence of our purpose. And I've been thinking about it for a really long time as I've been observing, I suppose, especially in this last probably 6 months, observing myself in the chaos. And I used to be the chaos for a very long time in my younger years. My life was very chaotic. And then as I grew, there was moments of healing, crisis, and chaos. But the more and more I learned to observe, hold myself, recognize my reactions, the thoughts that were triggered from my reactions, realizing my body was in survival, and coming home to the uncomfortable, the feelings. And I think that was something that I really knew early on in my life, because I always had this awareness that a lot of what I was carrying wasn't mine. And if we think about carrying in the cells of our DNA, we carry 11 generations or more back. So what we do in this lifetime really does affect 11 generations or more forward. Plus, we're also clearing back. And when I think about a cellular level, and this was something that when I studied rebirthing in my 20s, that I was thinking, well, what lays in my cells? And if we think about frequency, and if we are frequency and this energy, well, energy is emotions, energy, emotion. And for someone as sensitive as I was and emotional as I was and emotionally reactive, and what I recognized from a young age, I got criticized a lot for my emotions. My mum used to say I was dramatic, I was emotional. Dad was always worried because I was so sensitive and how would I navigate the world. But in their rejection, in a sense, or their uncomfortable reaction to my big emotions, if they had realized they just needed to be present and to hold me so I could navigate through the huge, I would say for me, information that was coming through my body at a young age. And a lot of it was more than I could understand with the understanding of my human mind. And so what I was absorbing and processing through my body was not really mine. It was a lot of what was around me. But to understand that in my little body and the consciousness that I had at that time, I didn't have the space held. I didn't have a holder to bring me back into harmony. And I think as I sit in my work, in my business, and I look at what I do the best is I hold space. And when people go, space, what's space? I hold an energy, I hold a frequency of allowing people to be completely seen. Because I spent my whole life in the darkness. I've spent my whole life in probably places that I was never meant to be, but to understand the human experience, I had to see it from the arse end of the world, if you want to call it, the dark part of the world, that I didn't really fear the dark anymore. But what I feared the most were my feelings. I didn't fear the shadowy types of experiences that happen in the world because I've kind of experienced it in my own body. And I've probably attracted it on some level to have the experience to transmute it. When I say transmute it, to clear it from my body, to whether I was going to hold shame around it. I was going to move away from the experience and disconnect from that part of me. And what I realized at a really young age, that a lot of I was holding was not only mine, was my parents. And I even had that conversation with my dad when I was 17. But I just didn't have the ability to understand then how to move it through my body. I knew it was there. I knew I was repeating something. I knew it wasn't mine. But I also knew that from that information and the way that I was held, I created beliefs around myself in that. I came to understand where I was accepted and wasn't accepted. So I created patterns. I created survival patterns that I call adaptations. I became a people pleaser. I was the connector. I held responsibility. I overfunctioned. So I was a high achiever. I pushed and forced this place of connection and safety because I could never really come home to my body because I feared what I felt. And that felt scarier to sit in the uncomfortable in my own body than to keep pushing and overgiving and feeling disappointed and betrayed and sad, because really I was abandoning myself the whole time. So when I realized that the abandonment of self, and I was searching for it outside of myself, this acceptance, this love, this validation, safety, it was wired from my little girl. It had come in probably in lifetimes, because I've gone back in past lifetimes and I've seen the disconnect and aloneness and the shame and feeling different and separated from community. So I feel like a lot of my life has been alone. And it's funny, as I sit here in this moment, I'm not in connection with most of my family. A lot of my family dissolved in connection from after my mum passed. And I think that as I've stepped into my truth and understanding of the patterning of my lineage, then I couldn't play that same game anymore, because I was feeding the same energy. I was feeding the same energy that was something that suppressed me. But the way I was adapting was the way I was feeding, in the sense of I was playing the same game. I was acting the same way. My expression was the same in the repression of the feelings that laid within my body. And I just wasn't prepared to do it. And cutting cords and letting go, I think for someone like me, with where all my placements are, little Cancer with the Taurus, safety and home and family are such huge priority for me, and love and connection. And I was looking to hold on to everything. But you know what happens when you hold on? You're holding on to something and you're staying in places that you are no longer meant to be. Because how I've seen it, and when I watch so many clients come to me, and the biggest fear that they have when they really start to move from the mind into the heart, into the body, and the body remembers, they're scared to be alone, because they've felt alone. They've felt disconnected. They've felt isolated. And the times that they felt isolated the most is when they were having those big feelings, when they didn't know how to stay in their own body to move it through, that there was someone that was holding space, someone that was seeing them, someone that was just allowing them to express with no personal reaction to it. They didn't try to fix it. They just loved the person as they moved through it, and could help them be guided back home to presence, back to harmony, back to peace, back to alignment in the body. So when I think of nervous system and how I teach nervous system and how I share nervous system, it's not about being calm. Yes, there's a calmness to come back to. There's a place that we want to come back to in alignment. But life is constantly going to challenge us. So what are our patterns? How did we survive? And how do we adapt to stay as close as we could to connection? Because these are the places we have to look at ourselves in the way of, what are my patterns? How do I try and establish connection through my nervous system reactions, watching how I attach, how I hold, how I react to things. Your reactions are your greatest portals, in the sense of like, when I'm reacting, something has triggered a reaction within me. So my body's gone into a reactive state, normally in fear of a feeling that has been activated. And that feeling's not from this moment. I can tell you most of the feelings that are activated in this moment are minute to the feeling that you're holding on to in the body from the past. And that frequency, that cell and moment in time that's frozen and trapped inside your body, is constantly vibrating in a certain frequency to keep bringing these experiences to you. And we're either going to repeat it because we stay in the reaction to the present moment, and then we go into blame, and then we shame ourselves, and we keep the present moment, as in not even the present moment, we keep the situation or circumstance the reason why we are experiencing the thing. So we stay in blame, we stay in projection, we shame ourselves, but we never get curious enough to go within. We never follow the cord back to the moment in time that we're truly stuck in. So how can we ever change the current reality if we're vibrating at a frequency from the past? And that's where the nervous system comes in, because as soon as the nervous system reacts, it reacts with an emotion, a feeling, a sensation. That's already happened in the body before the mind, the ego, comes in to protect. And the ego's job, the mind's job, is to keep you distracted. So you'll never go back in. And you know why you don't go back in? Because you fear the feeling. You fear the uncomfortable that lays within the body, that makes you so scared that when you have this feeling, no one's going to be there on the other side to hold you. And you need to learn how to hold yourself. And this was probably my hardest lesson in so many ways, because I really always wanted someone to be there. I wanted to feel this deep connection. I wanted to feel that I was supported and I was loved. And you know, the funny thing is, it hasn't come from anybody else. It's come from me. And I think the bonus is, when I do come into relationship again, there'll be more of a deep surrender and holding of myself to open to love in a completely different way than I've ever loved before. Because love was something that was filling a void for me, in a sense, but love has always really been to me painful, because it kept showing me consistently where I was abandoning myself and minimizing my own needs. And you know that we lose the ability to understand what we need when we don't know how to feel, because we all had needs. Needs initially, if you look at a baby, when they cry, they have a need. They're hungry. They need a cuddle. They need their nappy changed. So we have needs underneath our feelings. But if we've repressed our feelings and we've moved away from that, what we need gets lost. And we think, oh, I need to go on a holiday, I need to go to a retreat, I need to do this. You need to come home to self. You need to come back in and learn how to navigate challenges. Because life is challenging you for you, not to trigger you for no reason. And if you look at every trigger or every challenge or situation or circumstance, and trust me, I'm not sitting here from a place of, oh, I've had a really great life. Life has challenged the fuck out of me. It's tried to break me many times. And I think those of us that have come here, when I say purpose, to hold a frequency, when I think of humanity evolving and we talk about this idea of new earth, it's how can we hold the frequency? Because what we've been programmed, patterned, what we believe is to go away and pull us away, to distract us in fear, away from the truth of ourselves, the remembrance of really what's within ourselves. And yes, we definitely hold on to pain, suppression, betrayal, hurt, sadness, all of that lives in there. But when we get to hold that, when we get to transmute that, clear that from the body, because we learn how to stay, and that is regulation by staying longer in the uncomfortable, to be able to move from the mind, from the ego to the body, and recognize the sensations and the communication of the body, and then to stay with the feelings that come through and not fear them. I've had so many people come to me wanting to understand themselves, and as soon as I put a spotlight, when they've opened that part of themselves up to themselves through the breath, through working with me, they've run. They're not running away from me. I mean, initially when I was younger, I used to think, why do people react like that to me? It's because I put a spotlight onto the pain that they don't want to see, or the parts of themselves they deem unlovable, and they would rather go out and project it and stay in chaos and blame and shame in the current way that their life is, because it's familiar. And when we think of safe and we think of familiar, it's not what the mind wants, as in we've got this grand plan of what we want to dream into and co-create within our reality. But the thing that's driving the reality isn't the mind. What's driving the reality is the frequency in your body. And what you truly believe lays within the body, because the body keeps score. And where your cells are vibrating are the frequency you hold, not what you think you are in your mind, not what you connect to in the ether. We can still be highly connected, as in the sense of to our gifts, but still not have any relationship or embodiment to the human form. And the human form is what we're living in, and we're changing this frequency and moving dimensions and realities, then we're doing it in the human body. So what we're clearing is the frequency, the energy in the cells of our body. But if we are constantly in distraction, because that's what the body has learned to do, when I'm in fear, I'm not running from the bear anymore, but when I'm in fear, my body reacts. I go into my nervous system reaction, and then my mind distracts. And your mind is always going from the past to predict the future. So the only place that we have that is our power, and I know that is the pathway back home to ourselves, is the present moment. And regulation isn't just calming, it's being able to bring yourself into the present moment, in the challenge, in the distraction, to bring presence into the body and to understand what it's showing you. Because if you can move from reaction, where the mind wants to take you down a chemical pathway that keeps you in more reaction, that keeps you in continual reaction and distraction, if you're willing to understand that that is taking you down a path that is familiar, even though you don't like it, it's still what you know, because you know how happy you're going to be there. You know how sad you're going to be there. You know what that chaos feels like. That's what your body is conditioned to. And a lot of that has stemmed from this adaptation from the past. And so this constant fight we have with ourselves, and why we're still here, is because we're not willing to go back in. We're not willing to devote the time and energy to ourselves, because we're so busy trying to fix it outside. Do more, be more, act more, exercise more. It's like we're losing the understanding of where the source is, and the source to change it, and the connection that opens up when we activate these cells. When we clear these cells, what activates in remembrance on the other side of it is this embodied understanding of your connection, and the frequency that you get to hold from clearing what lays frozen in the cells allows you to remember who you truly are. And what I'm starting to remember is I'm not here to do all these things. It's like my experience and my understanding of self and my human self, and also what's been activated from this, knowingness that I've always been different, is the frequency that I get to hold in the chaos. Is the frequency that I get to hold when everything around me is showing me something different, in the knowingness of who I am and having a very, very clear connection to my own inner understanding and source. And that's the place that I let guide me, my heart, my higher heart, because I don't fear my feelings. I don't fear life anymore because life was really hard. So life kept showing me hard. Life kept showing me abandonment. Life kept showing me lack. And a lot of the time when we pray and we hope and we want to do all these things and people come to me, they're in so much lack and desperation that they're looking for someone to fix them. But what I will never do for anyone is fix them because they're not broken. They just need to remember. But the only way I know how, and this is pathways that I've created through building a foundation, because the foundation that we keep building, these new identities or these ideas that we have, always collapse on some level when a challenge comes in. We might make it somewhere, but the internal layering of how we relate to ourselves stays the same. And it never satiates the feeling of success or connection or peace or love, because whatever happens outside of us without the internal connection never really feels whole. And as I've been sitting with my business and creating these changes and what I want to offer and how I want to show up, it just keeps coming back to me that it's not about convincing anyone. I just have a pathway back in that I know works for me. And I will hold anyone in my space to remember that. But it's not the easy pathway. There is no kind of quick fix in this understanding of evolving in your human form, for us as in humanity. There's a remembrance from the darkness in the sense to the light. It's not rejecting any part of self. It's how do we hold all parts of self? How do we bring ourselves back home through loving and understanding what we actually experience in reaction to all those moments in time that we're stuck in? It's not about re-traumatizing yourself. It's not about going back and not even having the interaction. It's just knowing the interaction of how you felt in that moment when someone didn't show up the way that they needed to, or when someone hurt you the way that they did, or someone betrayed you the way they did. Whatever you experienced, your pain is your self-responsibility. No one can take that away from you. No matter how much you're loved on the external world, no one can really take that away from you, but they can hold you in presence. And when you're not looking for anyone to fix you, that beautiful presence of understanding and being seen and held in community, in sessions, in a course that gives you the guidance, in the sense of program that gives you guidance back in to recognize where you're limiting yourself. Because really in the end, we're only limiting ourselves. And when you run away, you don't run away from me or anyone that's showing you parts of you that you don't want to experience. And this is why it comes up so deeply in relationship. But we blame the other person. But then funnily enough, when we go into relationship again and we attract a different person, but funnily enough, the same pattern appears, we then blame the other person again and we go into the chaos that we know and we have that same interaction. So we have to really recognize where we're patterned within, what we believe in ourselves, but we can't do that when we're in constant distraction and reaction. And that's when I think of nervous system work is, where do I react and how do I distract and what are my patterns that I survived in? Because when I can recognize that, then I can bring myself back to the present moment and really feel beyond what my mind wants to keep me distracted in. And then I also have very clear understanding of my thought, of where I am in any present moment. Because as soon as I know I'm off and my mind is starting to move down a pathway, I recognize that I'm having a feeling. And as simple as that, I come home. I come back to the present moment. I breathe back into my body and I feel. I let whatever is present. And you know what? The funny thing is, what I'm feeling the most lately is this overwhelming receiving of gratitude and love for holding a space for myself, a frequency that now is who I'm becoming. And the more and more I hold that frequency, the more and more love, connection, support I feel. And funnily enough, everything that I was searching for and trying to find and looking outside of myself for has kind of gone. The noise is gone. The contentment that I feel, the peace that I have. And I'm alone, weirdly enough. The thing that I didn't want to be my whole entire life is where I'm at, completely and utterly in emotional sovereignty and peace with myself. And sometimes I sit and I'm going, oh, it's really weird. Everything I used to long for and everything I used to, have these little moments of time that I'm like, oh, I just really wish. I don't wish it anymore. And if I'm wishing it, I sort of think, well, where can I fulfill that? Because if I stay in this frequency and hold this space, then everything that is meant for me will come. Sometimes not as fast as I'd like it to be, my little human self that likes to get everything done in, yesterday. But I've learnt patience. And patience has definitely been humbling, because the way that I used to push and force and was quite masculine in my doing really disconnected me from the presence of my body and the capacity that really I do have. Not the capacity that I can push to, because I have a really big capacity to over function, over give. And now it's just not an option for me, because I know that throws my energy. I know that's my old familiar pathway, and I choose to only use that when it's in alignment for me, when it feels really centered and I'm anchored and I really truly have the energy. I'm not coming from lack. And every time I do that, the stability that I feel, the anchoredness that I feel to who I am is so much more clear to me. And I feel like on the daily I'm remembering things that I thought I would never access in this lifetime, that I kind of knew, but I just didn't realize that I had the ability to remember. And I feel like that is just going to be more and more. And the funny thing is, my reality of what I thought that I needed to hold on to have that, I thought I would have this. I do have a beautiful family, but my, sister, my stepdad, my dad and my stepmom are still in my life, but my close family my stepbrothers, I have no contact with them at all. And, I have deep acceptance for how they feel in relationship to me and what they believe is valid to them, and also what I know is valid to me. And I had to follow my truth regardless of how sad that was for the little girl in me that wanted to connect and hold everything together. Because when I set her free of the responsibility of being responsible for everybody's emotions and to connect the family kind of fell apart. And then I recognized too, I'd been adapting and suppressing so much of who I was, because the way I express in truth makes them feel uncomfortable. And so I would minimize my truth to stay in connection. And I've done that my whole entire life, thinking that was the way that if I stayed long enough, they would love me. But it actually worked out the opposite. And there was always conflict because the uncomfortable was still there for them. And also too, I was not living my path. I was not living my truth. So I was overgiving out of a nervous system response to survival to be loved. And I choose to love me. I choose to devote every moment in time to myself, and in my alignment, whatever is meant for me, I believe will come. And everything that I teach and everything that I walk is in devotion to honoring this frequency that I've created. And I know for a fact that no one in my lineage, especially the women that didn't have the ability to honor and step into their power, I'm not only doing it for me, I'm doing it for them. And then I'm also showing the boys, my sons, what it is like to be in alignment and acceptance and to be loved and to know themselves in separation to me. Because it was funny because we were having a conversation, my youngest Tyler and I was talking about being perfect. I said, dude, I never want you to be perfect. And he was trying to find this song. And he says, yeah, because you know that song? It's like, I love you. You're perfect just the way you are. I said, no, it's not. I said, I love you just the way you are. He said, no, I think it's perfect, Mum. I said, well, I think it's I love you. And we had a laugh about it because, you know, I was saying to him, there's nothing that I want in you to be perfect. I want you to be real. I want you to understand yourself, good, light, dark, and bad. And anyway, so we were having a laugh about this song because he thought it was perfect. And I said, no, it's I love you just the way you are. And he goes, no, it's because you're perfect just the way you are. So it's funny how these little perceptions of perfection, and I know that that's been a huge lesson to me to let go of perfectionism, because I thought if I was perfect, then I would be loved and someone would show up. But that was also something that my mum believed, and I think my nana believed, and they tried so hard and overfunctioned and showed up for everyone else's needs but their own. And in that lack, there was a disconnection in their own life, in their own heart, in their own path, because they suppressed it for others. And then I watched that creep into as I helped my mum pass away. That was in every reality of who she believed herself to be. And as we unraveled that in the last 4 months of her life, the freedom that gave her to pass over in a completely different space and understanding of herself, I think set her free. But it also set me free, as much as I was angry that she couldn't do it for me and I did it for her in a sense. I came back to how perfect the timing of my mum's passing was to really push me so deeply within, because everything fell apart around me. The relationship I was in, my family, my health. Like, talk about asking for your life to dissolve. And I know exactly the moment I asked for it. I was walking out of Freedom Float, and I think I've mentioned this a few times. I remember holding this space, and there was like 30 people in the room, and I was working with this beautiful being, and I walked out of there and I just went, this is it. Like, people speaking their truth, showing up. And I always just wanted people to speak their truth. And their truth sometimes is their pain at the start, what they're really feeling. Because I can read what people feel, not what they say. So for me, it's like, it's having this understanding always that I already know what they feel. And so what they're saying doesn't calculate to me. So it feels like a lie. And so when I sit in a room and after everyone's breathed and their mind has softened and they've felt themselves, there's this beautiful reality in the room, this beautiful presence with self that they remember, and the honesty that comes through. But I don't want that honesty to last just in that moment and that you have to come back to the next. I want you to be able to create that honesty in moment-to-moment reality in your life. And that's why I walk through this path of foundational self, to reclaim yourself, to then really understand and devote this remembrance to your frequency. And I remember saying in that moment, give it to me. I'm ready for everything now. And God, did I blow myself up? And I blew myself up holding the frequencies that were coming through me, but also my life dissolved the way I knew life as it was. Everything I held on to, all of the spaces and places that my little girl felt betrayed, lost, hurt, sad, I had to turn even deeper than I already had. And I'd been doing this work for a really long time. And I'd already shown up in such a great way for myself, but this was like the greatest initiation for me was from death. It was like from my mum's death, I birthed myself beyond the limits that I was born into, and the understanding of who I was through my mum's eyes, through my dad's eyes too. And that also goes down the lineage of generations I was born into, and the access I've had to clear so much and understand it. But really, you only have to understand the patterns that you've brought in, the patterns that you play with, the beliefs that are in your mind, and the distraction that it creates from your body. And I really wanted to jump in here today because that really is your purpose. If you want to feel really satiated in the sense of, yes, we can all achieve things, but if you want it to have that deep alignment, that deep satisfaction of every moment and the next, you're listening to source, you're listening to your higher self, that's the path, that this aloneness and this experience of separation starts to dissipate when you really connect home to yourself, and then everything feels more fulfilling. The simple moments ridiculously feel so fulfilling, and the confirmation that you see all around you in the little things brings so much gratitude and love into my life. And I want everyone to remember that, because the world is in chaos, and a lot of things we're not going to be able to control as it dissolves. Like it felt like when my life dissolved after my mum died, like we're going through a death, and we either hold on to the past and the things that we've been taught and the programs that, you know, have been passed down and how that's created our reality, or we go inside and create and co-create a different space in humanity that we haven't experienced before, because we're the holder of our own frequency. And if we want to do something, when we look outside the world and we feel helpless that we can't do anything, the moment will come when you are the holder of your own frequency, because everything will align in the perfect moment for you to be able to give in the way that you need to from an aligned space, but not from lack anymore. Not from being a broken healer, because you don't want anyone to feel what you felt. And I see so many people go into the role of healing. This is why it's so important when I teach in my facilitated training is I don't want you to go out in lack to show up to heal others, because you want to absorb their pain and take it away. And a lot of people that come to me are very empathetic and sensitive, and they go out and do all of the things, but really it's about coming home to hold a frequency to be seen. The breath is the portal, the breath is the tool, but the space that you hold is the experience that people will remember, and the presence that you can have, because you're not triggered in anyone's reaction to themselves or emotion. You can let that be free. And there's a beautiful gift when you can hold someone in their emotion and let them move all the way through it to come home to presence in themselves. So it's really important as we find our purpose that we recognize as a greater purpose, that we have got to stop feeding the things we fear and start to come inside to recognize why we fear them, where it lays within ourselves and why we keep seeing it in our reality. And when we can clear what lays within, what shows us without is completely different reality. And that is the space we hold. That is the purpose I feel we are here for. That is the guiding home. And that really feels to me in what I share and everything that I do, the reason that I've walked through, it feels like death, rebirth. Like there is no fear, but understanding. And it's not even like life is complete, but it feels whole. And the expansion now for me is to how much can I hold? How much can I regulate, in the sense, build capacity to hold what I'm willing to feel worthy of, to receive in this lifetime, to remember in myself. And I'm just as stubborn as I have from the moment I started this, in the releasing part and the understanding and the diving through the shadows. I feel the same way about what I'm ready to receive, what I'm willing to co-create within this life, beyond what I've ever been shown in any of my realities. I'm ready to hold that. I'm ready to remember. And that's what I offer in my purpose, is the frequency that I hold for humanity. And if we want a purpose when we feel like we don't have one and we're trying to find it, come home to yourself and realize that is the purpose. If we want to change humanity and we want to create this idea of New Earth, a place that we all are free, then we need to become emotionally sovereign, and to remember what we hold within will create what's without. So I hope that's kind of given you a little understanding from my perspective of how I've walked this path and landed here, because so many people are awakening and it's going to feel like chaos right now. It's going to feel scary because it's going to be happening so much faster, whereas I've had my whole lifetime to understand and to walk through the pain and to walk through the understanding. And it's happening quick and fast now. So I can imagine those of you that are waking up and feeling, or have had understanding but are ready to embody. The awareness that you've created is now ready for embodiment. Is in meaning I'm coming home to my body. I'm shifting whatever I'm holding on to within those cells that create distraction, dis-ease. I'm ready to see, to clear, to feel, and to come home to myself and stop looking outside. But I see so many people who have lived their life in distraction and adaptation that it's very hard to slow it down enough, especially in the challenge, to come home to how you feel. And it takes practice. It takes co-creation. It takes a moment-to-moment awareness. And sometimes it's moment-to-moment, breath by breath. How do I bring myself from my mind to my body? And I'm creating some really amazing tools, and actually a little AI me called the Inner Compass that I feel will really help support you and take you through practices and understanding through everything that I've learned over this lifetime. And I'm putting more and more of that in. I want this to be a conscious space that you can use. We're all moving in a time that is maybe a little scary when it comes to what AI can be. But I think if we are still staying connected to source and using this from a high frequency, then we're going to create something very different in our reality. So it's not fearing and avoiding what is, because then we're feeding the fear of what that could be. Let's co-create with it. Let's understand it. Let's move in and feel why we fear. And let's not feed it. Let's not feed that into the reality. Let's clear it from within so we can hold a neutral space, or we can co-create with it in the way that we still open up in a very connected way to help humanity. So I hope that little Mels Musings today aligns, inspires, reminds, supports you in a way for you to come home and really go and check out my Foundations of Self. It is the foundation and the step-by-step understanding that I always come back to, no matter what I'm doing within myself, whether I'm working in a higher frequency and channeling, whether I'm going back into my inner child or past life. I always come back to this foundational self because I'm transmuting it from within. And, you know, as I build this capacity to open, to remember more, as I'm clearing anything subtle now from my reality, it all comes back to this foundational work over and over again. And when we can understand our humanness with such gratitude of how our human body protects us and has survived, we can go, of course. And we can understand that, but also observe ourselves to change it in the present moment, to then go back in, to then create a new now reality. So I have so many things that can support you. So please reach out, and otherwise just have a beautiful day, and start to come back to the moment. Start to use your breath. Start to recognize those thoughts that might be distracting you, and learn to start to come home to your body, piece by piece, pattern by pattern, breath by breath, moment by moment. Sending you so much love. Have a beautiful day.